What's up, everyone? This is Dr. Tyler with the latest episode of the Fight to Thrive Health Coaching Podcast. Super excited to be here with you today. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about an experience that I had last weekend and how I tie it back to health and wellness. And this experience was around surfing. And honestly, I got my ass kicked a little bit. Everything was going fine. And then my friend had left and we had been surfing for a while, and I was like, I probably should have left with him, but I felt like I was getting a good groove, wanting to figure it out. And we were in San Diego and got into some crazy waves, and I got near like the break point of this one wave, and basically I got caught up in it and my back got all twisted around, and it was pretty forceful, pretty aggressive trauma, if you will, on my back. But what was kind of cool about it was that I thought I might have a serious injury just from how much like velocity was behind like the impact when I hit and when I got kind of twisted around. But thankfully, like coming out of it, I actually just had some soreness, no serious injuries at all. Knock on wood. I actually have an MRI tomorrow to check out to make sure there's no recurrence of a tumor in my back. So, we'll see and make sure there's no serious injuries. But it got me thinking of why that is, because based on the force behind the wave and how badly my back was twisted up and the history of the surgeries and things that I have, why did I respond so well to that? And I think the key is, in my specific case, was because I've been putting in the work from a prevention standpoint. And it's not to say that everything that's bad that ever happens to us could have been prevented if we did, if we took better care of our health, for this example. But I think it does really play an important role as far as not just from the physical side and avoiding injuries, but from the mental emotional side and not getting to that kind of break point, if you will, from something just being like a stressor and it's causing a little bit of what we call a disturbance, to becoming like a serious mental health issue, right? And so this is why essentially I started this business, to look at things from more of a preventative standpoint instead of just, okay, we have a problem that's here now. Let's say down the road that's obesity or diabetes or a stroke or Alzheimer's disease or a heart attack. Again, not all of those things are completely within our control, but there's a lot of things that we can do to prevent those downstream long term if we take ownership of our health, wellness, and mindset right now. And I honestly believe I didn't get injured because one of the things that I do every single morning is a spinal mobility routine, because I deal with a lot of issues with my back if I don't stay on top of those things. And so a yoga sequence every morning focusing specifically on spinal mobility and control. And then I also go to a yoga studio where I'll practice an additional spinal mobility and stability routine for 60 to 90 minutes at a time. And so because I had built up the flexibility in order to sustain that kind of impact and that kind of torque on my body without hitting that breaking point, that's why, I'm able to stand here today, move around good, went on a hike this morning without serious injuries, even though that just happened yesterday. And so, thinking about this in terms of waves, right? Because life is going to bring waves. There's going to be these big things that happen, big or small, that we're not expecting that cause stress, right? And our response to those waves dictate our life, essentially. Do we grow as a part of the process of learning to adapt to those waves and those changing tides, or do we succumb to them and just get wiped away by them and get injured? And so how we approach these things, how we approach the day-to-day is what's going to dictate our response to those things. Let's first look at it from the health perspective, all right? What I'm seeing with a lot of my clients right now is that, their labs are coming back showing that things aren't quite right. That might be from a hormonal perspective, because of stress, for example, that's been building up. So, their sex hormones, like things like testosterone and estrogen, are thrown off of balance. Their thyroid is thrown off of balance, might be experiencing some immune type issues or some metabolic issues because of that. And we're not seeing disease necessarily showing up or any kind of illness or even obesity or anything like that. But the fact that we're kind of nipping this in the bud and bringing in the interventions, being different exercise program, being a stress management program, being changing nutrition, being supplementation to kind of help naturally correct what's happening from a hormone standpoint and to help with the stress management or to help with the energy without needing to jump to hormone replacement therapy, which again is just kind of putting a Band-Aid on what's happening. And so if we're kind of attacking our health from all these different sides, which is what I try to do as a coach, then ultimately when those waves do come, when let's say it may not be a surfing accident, let's say it's from the physical side where you get hit with some kind of sickness, right? From that sickness turning into maybe something that keeps you on the sidelines for a long time or not is going to be highly dependent on the condition of your immune system, right? How well is your immune system able to fight this off? And it's going to be able to fight it off a hell of a lot better if you are coming from a good place from a gut health standpoint. Less stress in the body leads to less stress on the immune system, and now we're able to fight off whatever illness might be present in response to that. And same thing with like the nutrition standpoint, and if you're coming from a good place nutritionally, and that will help your body's natural immune response, things like this. And then we can also look at this from the mindset side of things, right? When I engage in my meditation, in my breath work, and journaling, and some of these deeper discussions that I'll have with people, it helps me change how when those waves do come, it changes how I show up and how my clients are showing up in response to those highly stressful times, right? And in order to set up your body and condition your body and your mind so it's going to respond how we want to in response to that stress, again, to keep it from going to a breaking point, it takes work, and we need to be intentional about how we're going about it, right? Something like breath work, it actually kind of creates, depending on what type you engage in, it can create this stressful response in your body that will cause us to have to adapt over time to how we respond to stress through practicing the breath work. And how we practice is how we're going to play in the game of life when it shows up. That stress comes, okay, our body is used to being a more stressed state and we know how to handle it, and we're able to balance things out a little bit better from a physiological standpoint, right? And then if you look at from a mental spiritual standpoint, if we're able to separate ourselves from those waves, because if we talk about it from a consciousness conversation, and our thoughts and our feelings and emotions, they're just the surface chop. They're just the very tip of our consciousness, where there's all of these other things that are going on a deeper level, that if we can get in touch with that and not try to suffocate or shove down or repress what's going on with our thoughts and emotions, but just come from that deeper place of consciousness where we recognize those thoughts and feelings are a product of our previous upbringing, for example, or what we've been exposed to in the past. In our brain, a lot of times, it's just trying to keep us safe, and it will go into overdrive sometimes when there's a threat that's happening in order to try to keep us safe. And, it's interesting that this surfing accident, if you want to call it that, happened this last weekend, because, also a little bit more about my life, there's been some things going on that I wasn't expecting that have popped up as stressors in my life around the same time. Like, I didn't just get knocked over by this wave. Like, I've gotten knocked over in some other ways. But what's interesting, because I've been so deep into this work and helping so many of my clients through it, I've been able to maintain this very like peaceful and calm state in well-balanced mindset throughout, because I'm used to taking that deeper seat of self, again, kind of not trying to trample down the thoughts and emotions or do things to avoid them, like drinking or drugs or things like that. Just recognizing the stress that's there and not holding on tight to it, letting it go in those waves. As if I don't try to stay clung to them, they start to naturally calm down more and more over time, where we don't need to be riding them anymore. And the problem is that stressful feeling can actually become kind of addicting, right? Because the chemicals that are released in response to that, things like cortisol, things like norepinephrine and adrenaline that are released, our brain kind of, it makes you feel alive, right? It makes you feel like, that there is a lot of energy to that, and it can start to pull for that if that's what it's used to experiencing. The brain likes what it's familiar. It likes what it knows already. And so if you're used to thinking like that, it's easy to continue to keep coming back to those more negative thought patterns and to those more stressful thoughts. And so when those waves come, now you come into even more of a stressful place, and you're just riding them, and you're trying to control what's happening. You're trying to calm the storm, like Michael Singer says, like by jumping in and swimming around, which makes no sense. That's just going to cause more waves. We just need to let them pass. And so if we can do that, if we can come in, meditation is just one example, but it's more about the way that we're approaching our thoughts and feelings, and backing away from the stress and backing away from the addiction to the stress, and not recreating circumstances in order to just create more external stress that's not there. Then we're not going to get to a place mentally where it's too much for us to handle. When these waves come, and that adds to more that's going on actually underneath the surface as well. And there's more for us to process through, and more for us to what we call like excavate through. Like there might be some past traumas that you're working through, that when that stress comes up, it triggers you. It triggers you, and like subconsciously you're trying to figure out all these different ways in order to make your ego, make your psyche feel safe and feel okay and feel protected. Whereas if you can learn to source that safety and that calm from a deeper place, that could be God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, recognizing that the hard times, although they're not fun to go through, they help you become who you are. They help you grow. They help you become better, and that God, the universe, is using them to help shape you, to help you become better, to help you become more. And I don't need to stay stuck up on the waves and worried and controlling what's going on, and because it just pulls the energy and the life force from me. Again, when we're stuck in cortisol and norepinephrine from our brain standpoint, in trying to stay in that stressful state, then that just pulls us further away physically from where we want to be by altering our hormones, our immune system. It's easier to retain weight and things like that. And it's easier to get, if you're always on that surface chop, when that big wave comes, it's easier for it to really slam you down on the beach and knock you on your butt for a while. Whereas if you're used to being deeper and you're not caught up there, then when the waves come, you're still okay. You're not up there on the surface getting thrown around, And so just bringing it full circle as to why this is really important is there may not be anything at the top of your mind right now that's an issue. You're going through life and your health is okay and your mindset's okay, but you're not putting a lot of work into it. But what happens when the waves come? Like in my case, when I got hit by the cancer diagnosis, like I got honestly knocked on my butt. If I were to get that re-diagnosis now with the tools I have now and everything I'm incorporating into my life, again, I'm not up on the surface. My response would be completely different. And I'm honestly at peace with whatever God has in store for me. And so I would encourage you, if it's something that you're not focused on, you're not being proactive and working on, it's not just about preventing bad things from happening when the waves come. It's about just a better overall experience of life, because if I'm eating well, my energy's better, and that causes less stress in my body because I have good gut health and good hormones, and I'm more level-headed. I'm not needing to crush caffeine and things for energy. It's just a more stable, better overall existence. And when there's less stress, ultimately we all can perform way much better, way more better when there's a lot less stress involved. And so there's the preventative side. I don't want the wave to break my back. But there's also the performance improvement side. When I do get on that surfboard, I'm going to be killing it. I'm going to be crushing it because my body's relaxed. I'm not all tensed up, and my health is good, and I can focus in on what needs to be done and what's within my control, because that's the only thing that we can control ultimately. Obviously, is what is within our control, but we spend so much time and energy sometimes focusing on what is outside of that sphere of influence that we can actually change. And so there's so many good things to work on. It's just a matter of having somebody that's going to be pointing you in the right direction, and that has basically looked at all of the research and has a really good educational background to organize it in a way of this works. Not only do I have the knowledge, but I practically apply it into my lifestyle, doing all of these things that I recommend my clients to do from a weight management standpoint, from a stress management standpoint, things like meditation, whatever your goals are from a health side. I think that I have so many different tools to pull from. I know I do, where we can really get you to where you want to be and avoid where you don't want to be. So I hope this was a good one for you guys today. As always, just hit me up on Instagram at Dr. Tyler Simmet. If you have any questions, concerns, any of this stuff interests you, would love to talk more. And that will be link to that will be in the show notes as well. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.